people, it's me, Anja. My pronouns are she and her, and welcome back to my channel for a new recent reads video. The first book on this list is called Passing. I mentioned this past summer, that I wanted to read more classic books this year, so this book was part of that collection of classic books that I've been reading lately, and also lately, I've been dedicating reading vlogs to each of those classic books individually, such as Fahrenheit 451, or 1984, or Catcher in the Rye. However, with this book, I just included it in a recent reads video instead. But anyway, for those who don't know, this book was written in 1929, and it's set during the Harlem Renaissance, and it basically centers on the reunion of these two light-skinned African-American women, one of which passes as white, and the other one lives openly as a black woman. The latter is Eileen, and the former is Claire. So to clarify, Claire is passing as white, and Eileen lives as a black woman openly. However, the book is mostly set in Eileen's perspective, and frankly, she frustrates me so much as a main character. I'm not quite sure if she's really supposed to, because I'm not quite sure how famous this book really is. And I won't even get into like the toxic, girly, queer undertones of this book. But if you are comparing this book to Wicked, for example, I would say that Eileen reminds me way more of Glinda, and then Claire reminds me way more of Elphaba, especially concerning the ending. I don't know if that really makes any sense, but basically I enjoyed the plot and the world building and the setting. As for the characters, I wish that like the author dived more into Claire's character and less from Eileen's perspective. Maybe it's because I don't like Eileen as a person, considering the ending and what happened, or at least what I think happened. Whatever. I know the ending is quite ambiguous and people have interpreted it many different ways. But anyway, all that to say, I rated this book 3 stars. I also think this book barely scratches the surface on colorism, which I don't even know is a subject that people really studied in 1929, so I'll give the author grace for that. But anyway, in general, I rated this book 3 stars. I think it's good, but it didn't really give me any new knowledge about passing or like racism or anything like that. So again, maybe this is one of those books like Fahrenheit 451, like 1984, that has been referenced so many times that I already understood the themes from it instead of somebody who read it for the first time and was learning about passing and like racism for the first time, if that makes any sense. So anyway, I rated this book 3 stars, so take that as you will. The next book on this list is called Try Your Worst. This story is a YA contemporary following 2 sapphic main characters who are forced to team up after they're both framed for escalating pranks at their high school, despite the fact that both main characters are lifelong rivals, which, first of all, their rivalry made no sense, and it seemed so immature and so weird. And I know that I don't quite have a leg to stand on, because I've mentioned earlier that rivals to lovers is absolutely one of my least favorite, like, romantic tropes. Second of all, speaking of the romance, I don't think they had any romantic chemistry, like, at all. But I did enjoy, like, the disability representation, the Jewish representation, the queer representation, like, that was fun. As for the plot and the mystery itself, I hated how it ended, given the villain reveal and the conflict resolution. I don't know. I don't really enjoy these like revenge YA contemporary stories. I don't know. I just had higher expectations for this book because I really enjoyed the author's previous book, but this book just wasn't as good, frankly. So anyway, with that said, without any spoilers, I rated this book 3 out of 5 stars, so take that as you will. The next book on this list is called All the Way Around the Sun. This story is a YA contemporary following an Asian main character who's on a college tour road trip with her estranged childhood friend the year after her brother passes away. I think the story is so good and it's so fantastic. First of all, the writing is so lyrical and so poetic, and I really, really enjoyed it. The characters are so well developed and so distinct. The romance is so cute and so well paced. And I loved the family dynamic so much. Her relationship with her parents was so good and just so well done. I just really, really enjoyed every single element of this book because it made so much sense. And I really felt for the characters and for the events and like the emotions and everything. This book is so good and it's so underrated. Although I'm not quite sure what YA books are objectively popular right now. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I don't really pay attention to like the New York Times bestseller list or anything like that because I don't follow many authors on social media, nor do I keep up with this stuff. I just look at the Goodreads average rating, although I tend to read books the week of their release date, so that may not be accurate months later. Does that make any sense? Anyway, all that to say, I think this book is really, really good, and I think it's really awesome. So with that said, I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called Waiting for the Storks. This story is a middle-grade historical fiction following a young Polish main character who becomes a victim of the Lebensborn program during World War II, which first of all, I just googled how to pronounce, so I'm not quite sure whether or not I pronounced that correctly. And second of all, I don't think I knew much about this program prior to reading this story, so entering this book, like, the whole story was so educational, which rarely happens whenever I read a book set during World War II, because since so many things happened during World War II, compared with the knowledge that I've learned from school and stuff, and the new knowledge that I've learned from reading so many historical fiction books, like, finding one where the setting is new to me is just so real. Anyway, all that to say, like, with this being a newer setting to me, it meant that the characters felt more real to me, if that makes any sense, because sometimes whenever I'm reading a historical fiction, the plot can become predictable if I know how, like, historically, how it will end. I don't know if that will make any sense, but anyway, this book was so good, and it was so well done and so well paced. I loved the mystery and the characters and the plot and everything. So anyway, with that said, I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars. I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called The Fight for the Hidden Realm. This story is a middle-grade Asian fantasy that follows a young main character whom I believe is Asian coded, just because the author is from Hong Kong, if I'm not mistaken, and the cover, like, she looks Asian, although race isn't necessarily a topic within this book. So I believe all of the characters are Asian coded, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, this follows a young main character who's training to become an apprentice to immortals, which I think is such a fascinating topic. And this book was so good. First of all, the world building was so magical and so dazzling and so atmospheric. The plot was excellent. I love a good underdog main character. I love a good, solid, fantastical, academic setting. Like, this book is excellent. I love the characters and the friendships and everything. Like, it was so good. This is the new Nevermore. You know what I mean? Like, this book is excellent, and I really, really enjoyed it so much. So anyway, with that said, I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I would definitely highly, highly recommend it. The next book on this list is called The Eyes of Gaza. This story is a nonfiction memoir following and depicting the events of October 7th, 2023 through the eyes of a Palestinian journalist, aka the author, and then I believe also the month afterwards. I think this book was so well done, and it's so good. I love reading people's diaries. I know that sounds so weird and so disrespectful, especially as someone who keeps a diary herself, but like, I think this book was so good, and it was so well done. And like, as someone who has been pro-Palestine for the past 4 years, I think this book was so insightful, especially given the history of Palestine and how like the author herself was reacting to everything that was happening to her home and all of the people around her. And I feel as if the Western media has kind of minimized like what the Palestinians have been going through for so long. And some people think that this like fight or whatever started 2 years ago, which isn't true at all. So anyway, all that to say, I think this book is excellent and it's so insightful and it's so educational, but it's also so emotional, which makes it so good and also gives me so much more empathy than I already had for what's been happening lately in Gaza right now. Does that make any sense? Anyway, I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars and I would definitely highly recommend it. The now last book on this list, and certainly not the least, is called The Rise of the Sand Spirits, which is the sequel and the second book in this Paper Dragons book series, which I read the first book 2 books ago. Anyway, this book was so good and it was so excellent. I love a good, nice, solid sequel. I loved how the author really amplified the stakes and the world building and the plot and everything. I love these characters. The world building continues to be so dazzling, so atmospheric, and so magical. I love the jellyfish. I love the age shifting. Like, everything is so cool and it's so fascinating. I love the mysteries. Like, I'm so excited to continue this series. I'm not quite sure how many books are planned necessarily for this series, but I hope so many more. I hate it lately, honestly, that so many book series are stopping at 3. Like, let's continue. Let's let 5 or 7. Anyway, all that to say, this book was so good. I really enjoyed it. So with that said, I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars, and I would definitely highly recommend it. So in conclusion, October has been a fruitful reading month so far, even though it's only the 8th. So maybe I'm counting my chickens before they're hatched, or whatever the expression is. But anyway, if you're new here, my social media accounts, which are my Twitter, my TikTok, my Letterboxd, and my Goodreads, are all in the description box below in case you're interested. And if you made it all the way to the end of the video, please leave in the comment section below the strawberry emoji if you made it all the way to the end of the video. Thanks for watching, subscribe to my channel if you're new, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!